Hello, aspirants. This is Professor Toad. I'm starting a lecture series on public administration. So, those who have public administration as an optional can benefit from it. So, let's start with our first topic for this series, which is Wilson and the science of administration. So, we are going to look on these. These are the important points that we are going to go through in this lecture. One is the introduction, then we will talk about Wilson, why Wilson was called the father and what made him think so much that he had to, it led to the invention of a very new subject. Then we will also look at the administration background, some observation made by Wilson before giving his arguments, his criticism, whether he's really a father of public administration or not, and validity of the criticism, and then we will conclude it why he's called the father of public administration. So let's start. So public administration as a discipline originated in the 1880s after Woodrow Wilson, who wrote a very famous essay, The Study of Administration. So this is the first time that government function as a field of analytical study was separated from public administration as a subject of inquiry. And then it also talked about why it should be a rational subject of a separate study. So this is this is the origin of public administration as a subject, and that is why it is a very seminal essay also. Okay, so let's go ahead. We'll talk about Wilson so that you get to know why was it talking about all these things. Okay, so first, obviously he was born in Virginia, USA, but the most important thing is that he studied politics, government, and law. So these three combinations made him think more about politics and administration. Okay. He had been the president of USA, so again, more experience in administration, and he also won the prize, Nobel Peace Prize for formulating League of Nations after the First World War. So he was quite experienced in administration and political science. Okay, and obviously he wrote the study of administration in 1887. That is the origin of public administration as a discipline. But the question arises that before 1887, was there no administration at all? What about the old civilizations, the Egyptian civilization, the great Greek civilization, the great Harappan civilization? Was there no administration at work over there? Obviously, even there was division of work and coordination between different sections of the society, and also there were kings, there was democracy in some parts, and there was Sabha, Samiti. So everywhere there was division of work, and people were coordinating with each other to perform each and every tasks. However, what what was different at that time and why administration came out to be a separate subject now is that most of them were monarchies, and administration was part of political science. Okay, so even in monarchy, what happens is the administrators are directly appointed by the monarch, and he divides portfolios between them. And this can be seen in Mahabharata. That Mahabharata also talks about Shanti Parva, which has 18 parts, and it all describes beautifully the functions, duties, and responsibilities of the king. So Yatha Raja Tatha Praja, the king should be dutiful towards the weaker sections, and he should also work for their welfare. So it is telling you the attributes of the king, and it is related to politics of that time. So it is mostly focusing on those attributes, but it is not actually talking about administration as a separate study. Similarly, Arthashastra by Kautilya also took ideas from here and also had its own original ideas. It also talks about division of work, how the most meritorious people should be appointed as administrators. But again, that is also part of political science because it is mostly focusing on the attributes of the king, how strong the king should be, what kind of kingdom he should run, and all these things. Similarly, The Prince by Machiavelli also has those things. And the Cameralists in Austria, Germany also talked about the similar things. So these are also political science thinkers. They talked about administration, but that was part of political science. So political science focused more on nature of state, how the kind of state it should be, kind of constitution that it should have, and who should make laws, how they should be made, and it talks about the popular government. So it talks about the popularity of the king also and the popular government. However, they focus very little on implementation. So this is the one of the most important thing. This is also what was observed by Wilson. Implementation, that is administration of these laws, was missing. And even we see even in today's time that lots of policies have been made. Garibi Hatao was a Nara since in 1970s, and still we have a lot of poor people in our country. So policies are being routinely made. They were all were very beautiful policies, but the implementation was missing. So that is where administration comes into work. So directly, what we are trying to say, the efficiency of the work was missing. Okay. So what separates political science and administration majorly is these two things. And even Wilson noticed that it is easy to make a constitution but difficult to implement them. So that is why also we need administration as a separate field of study. Now, other observation made by Wilson, let's look at that. So he said why the administration was needed. One, before before the 19th century, we see that most of the monarchy was there, and there was not so much complexity in administration. So there'll be for even in Mughal India, we see that military rule was there. They were just focusing on regulatory activities like collecting taxes and law and order. So these were the main functions. So political theories that at that time were enough to regulate all these things. But now in the 18th century, you see public sector undertakings have come up because of colonialism and also a lot of increase in trade and globalization. The trade and commerce had picked up. Personal management has also become very complex. So again, the question was arising: how should these functions should be governed? Again, that so he these were the observation of Wilson, because of which he wanted to establish public administration as a separate science. Okay. In Europe, he observed that in France and Germany, there were monarchs and centralized government. That is why they could ensure better administrative structures because they could bring in reforms faster. And that time, USA was a democracy, so there was more public opinion. You can see that most of the people, even Churchill talked about that democracy is the worst form of government because they were not able to take a lot of decisions. So similarly, a people's opinion was being considered. That is why the administration was not consolidated. So he observed all these things at that time. So now, based on which he had some arguments to be made. One is the politics and administration dichotomy. He said that politics and administration are two separate subjects, they are not related. Okay, so what are the differences he talked about? One, that politics is temporary. You know that politicians are elected on a temporary basis for 4 or 5 years, while the administration or the bureaucracy, if we talk about, once it is selected, it is permanent. Until they resign, they are there in the services throughout their life. Also, politics has a universal entry. Anyone can enter politics. The Constitution of India also only gives one criteria, that there is some age limit of 21 years in local governments and 25 years for assemblies and parliament. While in administration there is a restricted entry. There is obviously one basic criteria of graduation that is there. Politics focuses on policy formulation, while administration focuses on policy implementation. Okay, so the cabinet takes all the decisions. Every now and then you see the cabinet has taken some decisions, and they release that also in the public domain, and then it is up to the administration to implement the policies. Okay, for let's say, for example, if we take this Ujjwala scheme, so the policy formulation considers values like equity. They're focusing on women empowerment. But there is another program, Aspirational District. In that, the focus is on economy and efficiency. That is implementation of the same schemes. They will focus mainly on the implementation part. So when the aspiration district are compared, they check how many women have got cylinders in how much time. That is compared. They are not focusing on equity. The politicians are obviously responsible to people. Every 4 or 5 years, they have to go back to people and get elected. While the administration is accountable to political executive. You know how they can easily transfer any of the bureaucrats. So because they are accountable to politicians. Politics, they are professional politicians but amateur administrators. While the administrators are professional administrators, but they should know politics. But in this dichotomy, even Wilson was a little confused when he talked about that though they are separate, but they cannot be totally separated. Because obviously, if there is a friction between politics and administration, then administration will not be very efficient. For example, if the secretary is not listening to the politician, then they will not work for the betterment of people or for implementation of the policies. But he said that they should know how politics works. And he says that the field of administration is like field of business. That is, businesses focus on efficiency and effectiveness. Okay. For example, if Reliance or Tata hire you, and if you're not efficient or effective, like you're not result oriented, you're not finishing your work on time, they will remove you. Similarly, he says that administration is like field of business. Okay. So in administration also they should focus on efficiency and effectiveness. Now we can see that this public-private partnership has come up. Why? Because they are focusing on efficiency and effectiveness. There was a lot of red tapeism in government and other sectors. That is why we are focusing now on public-private partnership. Then he said that once policy is formed, politics should disappear and bureaucracy should take over. And this bureaucracy, he said, should be recruited based on merit. So how we are recruiting the civil servants totally on merit, and they should be given scientific training. Scientific trainings are given in, for example, in Labasna, so that their economy efficiency can be improved. Okay, because administration is a field of business, and they should be unpartitioned. Unpartitioned means that they should not care which party is in power. They should be neutral to both the any of the political party that comes to power. They should focus more only on economy and efficiency. and also on public duty. So they should be focused on public and their welfare. Then he said that because it is easy to make a constitution but difficult to run it. That is why also we need an efficient administration. Now he again gets confused that once on one hand he will say that we should not take public opinion as it hinders administrative development. For example, in emergency during COVID, lockdown was enforced, but no one in the country, the citizens did not like the lockdown. But if we had taken public opinion, then lockdown would not have been possible. So that is why he's saying that public opinion hinders it. But he then says that public opinion should be taken in a balanced manner. So he says that you should take public opinion, but in such a manner that administration should be efficient also, while public's opinion can also be incorporated. But he did not say how we can do it. But right now we can see that social audit committees, citizen charters, and 360 performance evaluation, they are talking about all these things. Then he talked about approaches to study of public administration. So first approach is philosophical, like in Ramayana and Mahabharata or Bible. They will talk about how good a king should be. Even Lord Ram was very affectionate, and he also stood for values, everything. But they were not pragmatic. For example, Pran Jai par Vachan na Jai. But now we can see how politicians change their statements each and every day. So this is what he said that this is not pragmatic, and how this should be done they did not answer. So he favored historical approach, comparative approach, and legal approach. What is historical approach? In historical approach, for example, Kautilya has given his theory. At that time, he identified the strength and weaknesses of the empire. So that can be studied, and that those can be implemented in today's administration. Similarly, in Mughal and British administration, there were strengths and weaknesses. There was centralization, the police and the uh, civil administration were very efficient. So those were replicated even after independence. Then again, there is a comparative study. What is comparative study? For example, you compare two countries. For example, he compared USA and Germany. He said that though Germany is a dictator, still the administration is very efficient. So we can learn about the efficiency of administration from Germany also. So he said that don't look at the person, just like a murderer before murdering someone is sharpening his knife. So he's very good at sharpening the knife. So one can learn the skill of sharpening a knife without and remove the intention behind it. So similarly, we can also learn from German administration and take those strengths and implement in USA. Right now, you can also see that we are also comparing our administration to USA's. Oh, every day, even the roads are compared, everything is compared. So that is part of his comparative study. Then there is a legal approach. Legal is that how our constitution was when it was made. It was the constitution of various countries were compared and then they were incorporated. So he's talking about something like that. Then he talked about he talked about efficiency and economy, everything, but he also talked about values like empathy, honesty. So these should also be included in administration. Okay, without honesty and integrity, empathy, the administration is nothing. Otherwise, what happens is corruption. Then the people in power are more favored. Then he said that since this study of administration can have some universal principles, then it can become a science of administration. Universal principle means that anything that can be applied at any situation, anytime, anywhere. For example, if you see hierarchy is a universal principle. So you have hierarchy in military, you have hierarchy in your home also, like your father is the head, then or your mother is the head, and you are the subordinate. Similarly, you can see hierarchy in the bureaucracy also, that the secretary is at the top and the peon at the bottom. Okay, so since these are universal principles, it can be called a science of administration. Now look at the criticism. He was criticized that he raised so many questions, then he's given any answers. For example, the concepts like political administration dichotomy. So he said that there should be dichotomy, they are separate, but how to separate them, he did not answer. He said there should be economy and efficiency, but how that can come into administration, he did not answer. He said that we should do comparative study, but how can we do that comparative study, he did not answer. So he did not provide any theory to make it a science. So anything that he said, there were no experiments done, there was no facts, no figures. So they were just ideas. So it could not be called a science. Then very important topic is that he did injustice to other legendary thinkers like Kautilya, Machiavelli, or the Cameralist, because they also talked about administration, but they are not called father of administration. He is called father of administration. So he is given that is injustice to all these thinkers. So are these criticism valid? Let's look at this. One, that he gave a lot of ideas. Yes, he did. But then that those ideas gave guidance to future thinkers who came out with answers. So if he had not questioned these or given those ideas, then the future thinkers would have not worked on it. For example, in political administrative dichotomy, Weber talks about it, that politics is different and administration is different, and then the Weberian bureaucracies comes up. So that is why Weber is called the father of bureaucracy from here, and dichotomy. Then he talked about economy and efficiency. Yes, they were very important, and the classical thinkers like Taylor and Fayol, they talked about it. They focused their entire theories on economy and efficiency. Later on, the new public management, which we call neo-Taylorism, where we have the PPP model. So they also are focusing on economy and efficiency. Then we talked about comparative approach. So that comparative approach, how that can be implemented, Riggs talks about it. Riggs talks about how the Weberian bureaucracy can be compared. He talks about systems model and so other models. Then about values. So the values the administration should have, like honesty, empathy, integrity. NPA thinkers like Waldo, they talked about it. That without values, administration is nothing. And even the new public services approach talks about values. Then it talks that there should be a universal theory so that it can become a test of administration. And classical thinkers provided universal theories, Taylor and Fayol, with universal principles like hierarchy, coordination, okay, span of control, and other such things. So those become part of public administration and called it a science of administration. And also, he said that we say that he did injustice to other thinkers like Kautilya and all. No injustice was done because political science thinkers, they were focusing their theory as part of political science, and they were more concerned about the kings and princes and their attributes, the constitution, how the king should be, how the nature of state should be. But they did not focus on implementation. This implementation was taken up by Waldo. Now let's conclude this. Yes, his work was truly seminal, which actually led to the origin of public administration as a science and a separate discipline and inspired future generations to work on it to continuously improve it for better delivery of services. Hence, he is called the father of public administration. So you can post your questions if you have any. I'm ending the session now.